large number of questions. I anticipate that some of you may have the same questions. I get confused when people talk about assets versus income. Obviously, if I live in a house, I have a lot of assets. Is this particular one is income-based? Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
Okay. Mr. Daugherty mentioned that you could take your water and sewer bill and also defer that. Is that just the debt shift portion or the whole part of the bill?
Who knows the answer to that?
Mr. Gilligan looks like he does.
Ms. Rice, can you put your water and sewer on this as well, or just the taxes?
The question is it the debt shift portion that's in your tax bill that you can defer, or the whole water and sewer bill, including the metered rate?
Stephen, Mr. Gilligan, can you answer that question for us, Mr. Gilligan?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Stephen Gilligan, Town Treasurer. Only the Board of Selectmen can waive a current water bill or the town manager. However, anyone who does not pay a water bill within a calendar year, the water and sewer bill is liened onto real estate, and that would then become deferred.
Okay, so don't go away, Mr. Gilligan. You may have a follow-up. My suggestion on the rate, so we can monitor this, is that perhaps Mr. Gilligan can report this in his report every year to what the current rate would be for someone going forward.
I'd be happy to do that.
I see little. Mr. Gilligan provided us with a very informative report. I was very pleased to see the end-of-year CAS positions were presented. We have no risk, in my interpretation, given the few people that will take advantage of this in going into a negative cash balance. Therefore, we won't have to borrow anything. But with our wonderful AAA rate, what is our current bond rate, long-term bond rate and short-term borrowing?
Our current short-term, the recent borrowing we did of a bond anticipation note, given the structure of the borrowing, which included a premium, our net interest cost was 0.179% for a one-year note.
Okay. I think, I'm confused by the different statements that have been presented by Mr. Loretti and Senator Donnelly. Senator Donnelly mentioned that when the person transferred the home or passed on, that the interest rate would kick in. Is my interpretation that while this would be a year-by-year interest rate for that block of interest, so let's say I had $5,000 that I deferred for this current year or this coming year at 1.75, perhaps interests go up a little bit. It's maybe 2% the next year. That would be for the 5 plus whatever the new growth is.
The interest rate is locked per year. In order for a property owner to defer taxes, they must apply on an annual basis. Okay. So each year's deferment locks in the interest rate for that year. The following year, the interest rate could change.
Okay, I got the impression from Mr. Loretti's discussion that perhaps they don't pay any interest until the transfer of the property
That's
happens.
correct. Nothing is paid until the ownership changes in some.
But I want to be clear: the interest does accrue.
The interest does accrue each and every year.
That's very important. That it's not like you wait until then and then you pay a month's interest. It's like the interest is accruing on each of these blocks for every year until the transfer event happens.
That's correct.
I would also interpret the risk here to the town as far as being paid as zero. This would be AAA risk, basically. The loan the town is extending to the property owner because anything happens to the property, we're going to get our money and the interest it's due. As we all know, we are fortunate to live in a very stable property environment in Arlington compared to the rest of the world. I think that does it. My confusions have been cleared up. Thank you, Mr. Gilligan.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I will definitely be voting in favor of this and ask you to join me. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McKinney?
What's that guy's name? Lawrence McKinney, Precinct 7. I am wholly in favor of this. And I had one question, which I might ask someone who could answer it. I have got to tell you that I'm older than I look. I shot past 65 2 years ago. I get my rotator cuffs repaired for $200 a piece, Medicare. And 2 years ago, I discovered I was eligible for a thing called the circuit breaker. And they dropped another $900 on my head. Will I still be eligible for the circuit breaker if I'm taking advantage of this wonderful thing?
You're making less than $51,000?
Oh, yes.
Okay, Ms. Rice?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Juliana Rice, Town Council. The Senior Circuit Breaker is a state program that relates to income tax. This is a local program that relates to property tax, so there would be no effect of one upon the other.
Gracious. Because although it's true that... Huh?
Is the question still open, Mr. McKinney?
Well, if you want, I mean, no, I was going to continue that I like this very much because...
I think Mr. Donnelly's anxious to give you a further answer.
Oh, Senator.
The circuit breaker works on what you pay on your property tax, so that you would only have to, if you partially deferred, you could still take the circuit breaker, but if you took the full amount in deferral, I believe that you would not have the circuit breaker available to you.
Oh, well, that stands to reason.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to check. I'm perfectly happy to give you...
But the council was correct. It's a state, the circuit breaker is a state program. This is a town program, but it also is based on what you pay in your property tax.
Well, I'm perfectly happy. That means I give the state back $900, but they give me $8,000. I can go with that one. All I can think is that I can remember when I paid a very famous public relations person $300 an hour when he was 95 years old. Kirk Kerkorian is about to buy another studio. He's 94 years old. I'm only 67. And although I was an entrepreneur, I didn't have a lot of Social Security. And so I can tell you that this is a substantial increase. And I look forward to it tremendously because, I mean, this means a couple of teeth for me. So I'm very happy for this. I won't bite anybody, I assure you. But thank you so much for coming up with this, and I hope you all voted for it unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McCory?
Hugh McCrory, Precinct 20. Well, I guess first of all I want to thank Senator Donnelly and people who proposed Article 30. I think Article 30 actually is something which helps seniors. I guess I disagree with Mr. Tosty saying that future town meetings we could raise the rate. I honestly don't believe that will happen. I hope it doesn't happen. So I think I'd take that with a pinch of salt. Talking about property taxes, one way to increase our property taxes is to decrease our revenue. This article, while the intent is good, and I wholeheartedly supported Article 30, I'm not so convinced on Article 29. The reason why is because it makes no difference to whether people stay in their home or not. It's not helping people. It helps after the property is transferred, but I don't see how that directly impacts our fellow residents, our fellow citizens' lives. I don't think it makes sense to give a financial incentive not to pay taxes. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't think this article helps people stay in their homes. This article defers revenue to the town after the property is transferred or sold. Article 30 does, and I support that, and I think a lot of people did. That's why it passed so unanimously. Article 29, I think I'm surprised at the lack of data that we've been presented with by the proponents of this article. Whether or not that's Senator Donnelly, the Board of Selectmen, I think it's unrealistic for us to make a decision based on any kind of data. I mean, how widely is this currently used? How much does it cost? Can I ask that question through the moderator to the Board of Selectmen? What data was used to evaluate the decision?
Mm-hmm. Mr. Dunn, do you have an answer to that question?
I guess, Mr. McCrory, I will say that you said something earlier that the deferment is only on after the transfer,
My understanding is this article is that the money is the revenue is owed once the property is transferred or sold.
Right. It is deferred. No money is paid by the property owner until they pass, at which point then the money is collected after they've passed.
Correct.
Okay.
So
all right.
how does that?
So in answer to your specific question, there are about 10 people who use this deferment this year. I do not have the exact cost.
So any indication of how much this will cost us? It sounds possibly not like a lot of money.
Given that with the current interest rate of 6% and the current income that is being applied, the income limit that is being applied, we have 10 people who apply. So we have on Monday increased the limit of increased the number of people who are eligible, and tonight we would be lowering the interest rate. So we expect that it will increase a certain number. I do not know of any modeling that would tell me exactly how many it is. I expect it's going to be a relatively low amount, and also just want to be a little bit more clear. It won't actually cost us money, as in it costs because we collect the money eventually in the end. It defers the money coming in. I do not have a valid estimate of how many new people will take us up on it.
Mr. Donnelly, did you have an estimate of the number of people you believe?
What I can say is the town of Lexington went to 1/4 of 1%. I think it's 0.026. And when that they increased to $60,000, and they actually went from I think the numbers were, I had the exact numbers, I don't have them with me. I think they went from 12 to 24 people. This would look, so we're estimating in Arlington, if there are 10, then it's probably projected that at least you would see a total of 20. Or that's what we've seen in other places when it dropped down. In Lexington, again, that was 1/4 of 1%.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my concern is that it's quite a substantial decrease percentage-wise, and doesn't have any immediate effect. I think the money would be better spent reducing people's seniors' property taxes on basis on whether or not they can afford to pay. I have one final question, moderator, through yourself. What exactly is a senior who is not head of household? So I'm not quite clear on what it means by you're not heads of household. Maybe the Board of Selectmen can answer that question.
Ms. Rice is going to tell us.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Juliana Rice, Town Council. It's not a calculus that would have to be done here as to whether a senior is or is not a head of household. It's merely borrowing a particular number that is set by the Commissioner of Revenue for the senior circuit breaker program every year. So the Commissioner of Revenue sets a certain different types of income limits for that program. And what this statute does, which is a separate statute, is it borrows that number.
Maybe I should be, sorry, I'll clarify my question. What exactly is a senior who is not a single senior who is not a head of household? In that case, who is the head of household?
I don't know, but it's not anything that would have to be determined at the local level. It's not anything going to the eligibility of the seniors at the local level. It's purely the number that's being assigned to their income by the Commissioner of Revenue.
Okay, I thought it was actually a criteria for whether or not they qualify.
No.
Okay.
That's on number 30, and that's been voted.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Schlickman?
Paul Schlickman, Precinct 9. Motion to terminate debate on all items under this article.
Okay, we have a motion to terminate debate on all items under the article. All in favor of terminating debate, please say yes. Yes. Opposed, say no. No. My opinion, it is a 2/3 vote. All right, we have before us the recommended vote of the Board of Selectmen is printed in their report. And, Yeah, I was about to get there. I was going to say, then we have Mr. Loretti's amendment that changes that to give us a 4% floor and tacking the interest rate to the 10-year U.S. bond rate as opposed to the one in the Selectmen's report. First, we'll vote on Mr. Loretti's amendment. All in favor of the amendment, please say yes. Yes. Opposed, say no. No. My opinion, that is defeated. We now have before us the recommended vote of the Board of Selectmen as printed. All in favor, please say yes. Yes. Opposed? No. My opinion, that is a positive vote. That terminates Article 29. That brings us to Article 31. We have a recommended vote of the Board of Selectmen with no action. All in favor, please say yes. Yes. Opposed? Okay, no action. Article 32.
Town Manager Adam Chapdelaine to speak to this article, please.
Okay, we have the recommended vote of the Board of Selectmen on this. Mr. Chapdelaine? Mr. Dunn, you're jumping the gun.
Well, Adam Chapdelaine, Town Manager. While the presentation is being put up on the screen, what I'm going to do here is present the findings and recommendations contained within the Department of Revenue, Division of Local Services, Town and School Finance Analysis. The full version was placed on town meeting member seats last week, and the electronic version of the document had been sent to town meeting members in either late January or early February. For those who need an extra copy, there are about 30 copies on the back table this evening in the hall. As I go through the report, I want to be clear that I'm not presenting either my opinions or the opinions of any board or committee. Rather, I am presenting on the details that are found within the report. However, at the close, at the close of the presentation, I'm going to make my recommended actions for a process to move forward. So through this presentation, how am I down below 6 minutes?
You told me last night you only needed 7 minutes, dude. You serious? You want 10? I said last night, and he says, give me 7 minutes. I thought you were serious.
Wow.
I only need 7 minutes, he said.
I didn't know it was going to be held to that.
Can you do it in 10?
Yes, absolutely.
Quick.
Absolutely. You just bought me a minute there. So I'm going to go through some quick history of how we got to the report, the findings that are contained within the report, the recommendations contained within the report by the DOR, and then again, my recommendations for a proposed process going forward. So the history, at least most recently, began with the vote on Article 51 at last year's town meeting, and that was an affirmative vote to request that the town manager research a consolidated town school finance department. That vote of town meeting was followed by a vote of the Board of Selectmen as well as a vote of the school committee, which resulted in the manager reaching out to the Department of Revenue, Division of Local Services to conduct this financial management review. So what sources and methods did the Department of Revenue use? So staff from the Department of Revenue's Division of Local Services Technical Assistance Bureau, as well as the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education School Business Services Unit, interviewed both in person and via the telephone appointed committee members, elected board members, as well as town and school finance staff. The full list of all board members, committee members, and staff members that were interviewed are contained in the last page of the Department of Revenue's report. What did they look at? They looked at annual budget documents. They looked at our tax recap sheet. They looked at balance sheets and audits prepared by our external auditors. They looked at the Powers and Sullivan report that was a result of the FY10 school deficit. They looked at the Massachusetts Association for School Business Officials report, which also was performed in the aftermath of the FY10 school deficit. They looked at the Town Manager Act and the town bylaws in regards to how they put together the town's current financial structure. And they really focused on three things. Where are we now in regards to our structure? What potential efficiencies or improvements could we make within our existing structure, and then what benefits or efficiencies could we realize through a re-altering or an altering or restructuring of the way we do it now. So starting with their findings, their initial finding was that despite the town's structural deficit for the past several years, it has earned a AAA bond rating from S&P. However, they did comment that despite that rating, S&P does rate the town's financial management as good rather than strong, which is an indicator that financial practices do exist in most areas, but might not be formalized or regularly monitored. They were also impressed and engaged with the experienced Capital Planning Committee, the Finance Committee, and the multi-year reports and the annual budgets produced, as well as the capital reports that are produced for a town meeting to vote on every year. Some of their general findings revolve around the issues that they see with independent finance officers, as well as the lack of accountability that independence creates. And they talk about the issues that come from independent finance officers when you're dealing with a finance structure that has departmental responsibilities, and how the lack of coordinated, centralized management can create difficulties in creating that departmental cooperation. They talk about historically how the town manager and the deputy town manager play a coordinating role amongst town finance departments, but the cooperation is voluntary and there's no actual accountability that's held through that process. They mention, and I don't have on the slide, but they mention that Arlington has not followed the trend of many Massachusetts communities, particularly among comparably sized communities with a AAA bond rating, to create a consolidated finance department with financial positions accountable to an administrator or a finance director. So they pose a question in the report. If Arlington wants to raise its financial management to the strong level, the question the town must address is, who is in charge of financial management in general, and in particular, who is responsible for ensuring that consistent, effective control and monitoring practices are in place across departments? The short answer now is that there is no one officer or board vested with the formal authority to fulfill this responsibility.